What is it that darkens the world?
What is it that darkens the world? Here comes somebody, he looks kind of like a Joseph.
Yes, that's true.
He isn't a Joseph, but he has that same demeanor.
That's true.
And he's talking about things that make him sad in his heart.
That's true.
And as he's talking, he's getting sadder, and the light is dimming in the room in which he's speaking. It's kind of like an audio-visual presentation, I believe. It's to make the point. And he's talking about how sad it is for him to watch the selfishness that's everywhere. And when it turns into greed, he gets even sadder. And how lying hurts his heart deeply. And everything he's saying, the light is getting darker and darker. And how cheating makes him feel so sick he doesn't know if he's going to be able to take another step. And stealing, he's sure he's going to die any moment. And bullying, he has now put his body flat so as to die without falling and hitting his head.
What about cowardice, sir?
Yes, and how cowardice also darkens the world, and arrogance, and the inability to tell what's true, and the unwillingness to tell what's true. Laziness, selfishness, cowardice, greed, hardened hearts, which somebody is saying lack of empathy. These things harden hearts and darken eyes. And somebody just said, open your eyes. And it's now very dark, and according to the clock, it's exactly the pitch, the height of the eclipse. And you know what I notice? There's still more light around than on those pollution days that we have.
That's true.
We have blue skies today and an eclipse, an almost total solar eclipse where we are, and there's still more light than on the pollution days that are all too frequent now, even though we're nowhere near any major urban area.
That's true.
Why do you ask? He's continuing on, this presence who's talking about what is it that darkens the world. He's saying short-sightedness darkens the world.
That's true.
Refusal to consider I could be wrong for each of us, for all of us, darkens the world. In other words, stubbornness, resistance to change, that darkens the world. What do you ask?
Sir?
Yes.
What about the refusal to acknowledge reality?
That creates blindness. And actually it doesn't have to take all that long. And just the fact that there are aids to sight, such as eyeglasses and contact lenses, doesn't mean that we aren't creating blindness for ourselves. And we don't mean any disrespect by this. We're not trying to single out eyeglass wearers.
That's true.
But we have to acknowledge that refusing to see what's really going on disturbs vision. It literally disturbs actual physical sight and definitely darkens the world. Why do you ask? I see what's happening. These higher presences are answering a question that's been asked purportedly by a ground zero host life, but in reality was channeled in from way up high, and the presences who are answering it aren't confused about that in a moment. They know this is just kind of like a bounce dive for the question.
That's true.
Thank you. And now I see the person who sent in the questions, and he's saying, I'm just testing. I'm sending in. He says, these don't get attached to these questions. I'm just testing to see if I can get through. It's kind of like when somebody says, testing, 1, 2, 3, can you hear me?
Yes.
That's not the real question. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. We understand.
I understand you. What are you experiencing?
This is still that same high voice who sent in the questions, and he's starting to experience a really nagging fear. This
true.
fear wakes him up at nights. He wakes up in a cold sweat.
That's true.
He feels like the icy hand of something bad touching the back of his neck, and
That's
he
true.
wakes up in a panic sometimes, and he starts to think, wait a minute, what if whatever they're saying up there in that dimension, what if all of that isn't really true? What if all of these signals that we've been seeing actually mean something else? And then he started to look into maybe the more dense dimensions, and he sees things that make him freak out. So he has these almost panic attacks.
That's true.
And he's just trying to figure out what's actually going on. And right now he's breathing a little bit constricted in his chest. The
That's
breathing
true.
is a little tight, and it's as if his fears are being proven to be true, but at least it's data.
That's true. What does the eclipse reveal in shadow that the light cannot?
Somebody up there is repeating the question, what does the eclipse reveal in shadow that the light does not? And he turns around and calls to somebody who comes up saying, yes, sir. It's somebody who's sitting behind him.
That's true.
It looks like that Star Trek Enterprise look. You know who this might be? Is Saul.
That's
Hi,
true.
Saul. Can we have the question again?
What does the eclipse reveal in shadow that the light cannot?
He says you have to think about the psychology of shadows. People who want to be in the light gravitate toward the light.
That's true.
People who don't want to see what the light reveals gravitate toward the shadows.
That's true.
And so what we find in the shadow are presences who don't want to deal with what's actually going on. What we find in the shadows are people who don't want to acknowledge that they need to change. We find confused people, frightened people, scared people, people with outright evil intent,
That's true.
and everything in between. But what we don't find are people who really want to know what's actually going on and have the courage to take a chance and stand in the light. Why do you ask? Oh, wow. And then somebody says to Saul, what does it say about you then? Now somebody else is speaking up. We're way up high. And they're saying, friends, Saul's assignment was to go into the dense dimensions. He went into the dense dimensions. That doesn't mean that he's hiding from the light because he dove in. He got the assignment to dive in. He dove in. He's gathering the data. He's fulfilling his assignment. If you get the assignment to go into a dark room and clean it up, are you hiding from the light when you say, yes, sir, and go into the dark room? No. No, that's not what's happening. So whoever said that about Saul, I don't know what they're trying to get to, but it feels like they're trying to stir up trouble.
That's true.
Why do you ask? You person who asked what that said about Saul, why do you ask? Shut up, shut up, shut up. That's kind of their answer. Shut up, you shut up.
Shut up. Stop talking.
Shut up. Sorry, I don't mean any disrespect. That's the protocol that we have been assigned. We have been assigned to answer the questions respectfully and then follow it up with another question. Why do you ask? This is, look, here's our instructions. The ones that have been given to us. These are the instructions. They've been given to us. They're kind of like engraved everywhere.
That's true.
Why do you ask?
What does the eclipse reveal in shadow that the light cannot?
It's again not about the eclipse per se. It's about what eclipses represent. And we have to acknowledge that there are cycles of light and dark in all societies and in all experiences of sentience. And the eclipse is a really good metaphor for something blocking the light. But what happens in an eclipse? Is it permanent or temporary?
It's temporary.
And as the light was obscured, is the light once more revealed?
Yes.
When these dark times peak, we will begin to head back to a society of living in the light. Right now we're in the darkness, and as best we can tell, we're continuing to head deeper into dark. And somebody's asking, why is that? We're starting to hear a conversation, and I start to see a table, conference table, and chairs around it, and it has the feeling of civil debate. They're not rude, but they don't agree. There are multiple factions, and they don't see eye to eye, and they've come to what seems to be a kind of a bargaining table. And the question on the table is how to allocate scarce resources.
Who or what gives form to light?
Who or what gives form to light? These presences at this conference room table are stymied, or somebody says bamfuzzled, by that question. They said, excuse me, what? The light is, the light just is, the light is, light is, light is the natural state of affairs, light shines. Most of the experiences of us are lived in states of partial light and partial darkness. As light hits presences, it illuminates certain things, and other things are not yet ready to be illuminated. But light is. Nothing gives form to light. You could say light gives form to other things, but light is the natural state of affairs. Light is. And this person is talking, and he seems to be somebody that the others view with some credibility.
That's true.
And he's saying he can see how this confusion can arise because there is so much darkness around, and people can come to believe, and he's meaning that in a larger definitional sense, presences in multiple dimensions can come to think that the light is somehow at a disadvantage or is outnumbered by the darkness. But he says that's actually not the case. A very small amount of light can lighten a dark space. It might be only dimly lit, but it is lit to some extent or another. It's not pitch black anymore. And he says there's very little that is actually pitch black. And in the pitch blackness, what we have is total refusal to consider what's actually going on.
What are you experiencing, sir?
What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Does the eclipse change your experience at all?
The sun is still shining, regardless of the moon's position with regard to the earth and the sun. The sun is still shining, exactly as in a nuclear winter. Above the thick clouds that block the light, the sun will still be shining. The sun still shines. We are here where there is less obscuring the light. Now heavy things settle down, and we notice the coal flakes that are coming in from above us, so we know that our days are numbered too, unless we can solve this problem, which is why we've gathered these good people here. And he's looking around at the other disagreeing parties at the conference table. It looks like there are many different factions, and they have come together to decide how to allocate scarce resources. That the metaphor, I think, is of water rights in a drought.
That's true.
It's what is water? Water is necessary for most life forms on Earth. In this dimension, in the ground zero dimension, it is necessary for life, and water rights are a real argument. For example, they're asking for an example right now. The Nestle Corporation is pumping millions of gallons of water a day out of the San Bernardino forest on an expired permit that they've paid like less than $500 a year to use, and they're selling 2 million gallons of water or something like that. My numbers might be slightly scrambled, but it's close.
That's true.
A year for profit, probably with the label of pura vida, pure life, and it's revolting actually. They're refusing to pay for this asset of the common weal, and that corruption is making massive mountains of bad karma for everybody involved in it. And the law of cause and effect is real, this person says, and when death occurs, as is inevitable for all of us, we are held accountable for our actions and our inactions. And don't think there's not going to be a big ugly payback on that one, because boy howdy there is. And somebody's asking, what have we seen? And I know what they're referring to. They're referring to that flushing motion that we see when these presences who have been so abusive transcend, they die, and then they're kind of like deep well injected into the horrors that they themselves created, so that they get to experience it at their leisure, is what somebody's saying. Meaning it's going to take a good long time to work off that bad karma. Why do you ask? Some of these characters, somebody's calling them characters, at this table are sweating so profusely. They are so unnerved at this. They look like they want to excuse themselves for a quick trip to the men's room, and then they're not coming back in. They just want to run away, and I see them texting their driver saying, meet me out front. And they're running away, and what they think they're going to do is really beyond me, because everything is observed from above. There's never a time that we aren't being watched. It's all being recorded. And so this guy thinks he's going to run out of here and I guess go hide under his bed at home, but they see him hiding under his bed at home, and they know he hasn't called his office and said, we've got to stop pumping water from the San Bernardino forest. Why do you ask?
Why do you ask?
They're saying, why are you picking on that guy? Look, that's the example they gave. Please look up, please look up, please look up. Please look up, please look up. You're arguing with the echo point. That's what the guy's saying. See? Look up, look up. This is a good example of a person who doesn't want to see. He doesn't want to see that conference room. He doesn't want to see it.
That's true.
And somebody's asking, in what category of presence what box would we put him in? He's not a dead guy.
No, that's true.
He's not a Vinavanov. He's one of those people that purports to be a guide or a guardian angel, but he's completely selfish. His heart is fully selfish, and he doesn't see any point of helping anybody unless there's something in it for him. In the reasonably near future, he seems to be a short-term thinker. Our Ra said many times that short-term thinking was one of the biggest problems in the community of so-called guardian angels, and if he could just get people to be longer-term thinkers, that everything would work a lot better. Why do you ask? He's asking, is that person a Vinavanov? I don't see any sign that he's a Vinavanov, do you?
No, I don't.
Well, we don't see any sign of Vinavanov presence. There's no sign of it. He seems to be a rank-and-file guardian angel.
That's true.
But please don't make that mean that we haven't seen selfishness in the ranks of the Vinavanov community, because we see it there too. It was happening in the most recent overnight. They were, now they're getting very upset, but it's true. You were trying to take the resources, actually, and there were other examples too of just the day before, where the light beings were doing doing work and you were trying to take their resources for your project, and they were evacuating dead children out of the deeper, denser dimensions, which is not something you're interested in. And I'm not saying you should be. I do understand that somebody has to focus on the big issues of our times. I really do understand that.
That's true.
But don't steal their resources. That's not right. It's selfish. I'm sorry. I know that you don't like that, but it's true. Please look up. Please look up. Please look up. Please look up. Look at that guy who's saying it. Everybody's selfish. That's the reality of it. This person up there, that's what they're saying. The reality is everybody's selfish.
It's true.
And that's what darkens the world.